Fewer than 2 weeks to go until we vote on the big decision. Should Britain remain in or leave the European Union? Ahead of the referendum, I'm talking to leading figures on both sides of the debate. Live in the studio tonight, UKIP leader Nigel Farage. Good evening. Earlier this week, I spoke to leading figures in the Remain campaign. Tonight, the man who's credited by some for helping to bring about this referendum and who now, of course, is campaigning hard for Britain to leave the European Union. UKIP leader Nigel Farage. Welcome.
Thank you.
Reducing the level of immigration has been central to your pitch to voters. Can you tell the British public at what level, broadly, you'd expect net migration to fall if we left the EU?
Up to us. The point about this referendum, too much of this is sounding like a manifesto. You know, a Remain manifesto, a Leave manifesto. The real point about this referendum is who makes the decisions. Do we have the ability to control the numbers that come to Britain or not? So that's the first and most important point to make. Now, what do I think would be the right number? Well, do you know, from the late 1940s, all through the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s, we had net migration coming into Britain at 30, 40,000 people a year. It was a number that was acceptable. It was a number that led actually to us having the best integration of any country inside
You'd
Europe.
like to get back to that kind of ballpark, roughly?
I would like to get back to
50,000 net.
Let's get back to normality. And what I would like to see is this debated in the House of Commons every year, voted on by our MPs, who then at elections could be held accountable by the electorate.
Well, let's just look at this chart here to show the scale of the challenge, if that's what you would want to do. Because this shows net migration last year. It shows you the chunk coming from the EU, 184,000, just a little more, 188,000 from the non-EU. So even if we left and you banned all migration from the EU, and I know you don't want to do that, but if we did, we would still have almost 200,000 net migration from outside the EU. It's nowhere near 50,000.
Not with the right government. And that's the point, isn't it? There's been no resolve. No, I mean, despite the fact that the Prime Minister has won 2 elections, albeit one in a coalition, but he's won 2 elections with a pledge to reduce net migration to tens of thousands a year. He's shown no resolve with non-EU migration, and with EU migration, he still is not admitting in this referendum the truth that he does not have that ability.
Well, let's just remind ourselves of this chart. It comes to about 330,000, 184,000 from the EU, 188,000 outside the EU. And then let me show you what you said on ITV earlier this week.
I take a view that is strongly pro-Commonwealth. If we have an Australian-style point system rather than an open door to 508 million people, then actually it'll be better for black people coming into Britain who currently find it very difficult because we have this open door.
Better for black people, better for the Commonwealth.
Yes.
Yet already there's 188,000 non-EU people net coming in this year. How does that work out?
But this is coming in through family reunions or whatever it may be.
Well, you're not going to stop that, are you?
The fact is, when it comes to people, a lot of people, skilled people, I mean, here's the mess that we're in. A lot of skilled people from the Commonwealth find it impossible to get into this country, whether you're, an engineer from India or whatever it is.
So you'd like to increase the numbers?
Well, what I'd like to do is to have a non-discriminatory policy on both work permits and settlement that did not say we'll have an open door to Romania or Poland or France or wherever it may be, but we will actually give everybody an equal shot from across the world.
I understand that, but you were implying in that debate, and you've said it before, that actually maybe we could increase if we left the EU, we could increase the numbers coming from outside the EU. I put 2 things to you. One, we already have almost 200,000 coming in outside the EU, and we aren't. Even you are not going to stop everybody from the EU coming in. So I see no way that you get to that 50,000 net figure.
There are 2 points here. One is quantity. The other is quality.
Well, stick to the quantity, because that's what I'm asking you.
Well, actually, if you go for quality, you make a big difference to the quantity. Now, if we have a system that says we want people who are coming to settle in this country or to work in this country to have trades and skills to bring, so that they will net be beneficiaries to our society, that they don't have criminal records, that they bring their own health insurance for the first few years. By going through that route, you automatically cut the numbers down pretty dramatically.
Right, but if you cut the numbers down like that, you break your promise to the young woman on the ITV debate, when actually there would also be less net migration coming from outside the EU.
Yes.
There would be both, wouldn't there?
But what we would do, in terms of the issuance of work permits, is not favour the EU over other parts of the world. We would have a fair, non-discriminatory approach to this. And that, you know, I'm sure that's the right way ahead.
None of this is telling us, given how keen you are on non-EU migration, or at least that's what you said to ITV, how you get anywhere near 50,000.
Well, let me simplify it, all right? That used to be a British passport.
How long it was going to take you to bring this
yes,
out.
and it's worth it, isn't it? Because what does it say on it? European Union. And there are 508 million people entitled to one of those, any of whom can come to the country. So the first thing we have to do to get to my aim, which I agree with you, given where we are, it's a hell of an ask.
But also given where you are with non-EU immigration, which you've been bigging up.
Hang on a second. What we have to do first is get back control over the bit over which we have no control at all. And one of my concerns is that just a few weeks after this referendum, we've got Greece going probably for the third bailout. We've got the Italian banking system in a very serious crisis. So we have no control if the Eurozone goes pop on the numbers that come to this country. So the first thing you do is to get control of the bit you can get control of. Then you have to have a government with resolve. Look, you've talked there about legal figures. What about the boats coming into Dymchurch? It's only because one of them got into trouble we're even talking about it. Okay. And the government has been warned repeatedly, we've not had the right government.
Let me put a broader point to you about migration. EU migrants who come here, they're more likely to work than people born in this country. They're less likely to claim welfare. They're younger at a time when our indigenous population is aging. What's your problem?
The problem is numbers. And the problem is we get... Some economic surveys will say that EU migrants pay more tax than they take out in benefits or use in the health service. Other reports, and I mean, you know, Migration Watch say actually net it costs us a bit. And the House of Lords said economically it's about even. All right. Now the Chancellor, George Osborne, seems to think this is wonderful because it's good for our GDP. Well, of course, if your population is growing by 500,000 a year, it'd be surprising if your GDP wasn't growing. What is not growing is GDP per capita, especially for those earning average salaries. And my problem is simple. Number one, people living on average salaries have seen a 10% decrease in their real living standards since 2005. And number two, do you know what? We shouldn't measure everything in terms of GDP figures or economics. There is something called quality of life. And that means the ability to get your child into the local primary school. It means being able to get a GP appointment. It means your children and grandchildren being able to aspire to having a house, things that you took for granted yourself. And these things, with a population that has risen the way that it has, these things are now real concerns for millions of people.
Since they're nearly all working, I mean, 82% of those from Eastern Europe are working. The rest are dependent families. Compared to 72% of the British population, our unemployment rate is now only 5%. Our employment rate, the percentage of the available labour force that's in work, it's at a record high. You cannot claim that migrants are taking jobs from those of us already here.
Well, there are still 1.7 million people unemployed in this country. And if you look at new jobs created last year in the British economy, the estimate is about 450,000 new jobs were created last year, 80% of which were taken by people born overseas.
That figure, of course, is disputed.
Well, OK, disputed or not, you know, I'm sure we'd all agree that it's a majority. So the point I'm making is this.
We're a successful country. We've got low unemployment. We've got very high employment. Bright, young, educated people, they find it tough in their own country. They want to come to our country. You and I are old enough to remember when people fled this country, there was a brain drain. We didn't do well. People couldn't wait to leave.
Of course.
Why would you not welcome the fact that the young and bright of Europe want to come to Britain?
Well, firstly, the young and bright that come, it's actually destroying the Baltic states. I mean, you know, you take someone like Lithuania, who've lost a third of their population since they joined the European Union. So that's not good for them. In this country, the problem is we've taken too many unskilled people into this country, and big employers, pretty unscrupulously, have chosen to employ those over British people. And I do not accept the criticism that I hear that the reason we have to have all these unskilled foreign workers is that British workers are too lazy, too drunk and too useless. I simply do not believe that.
On Tuesday night on ITV, you claimed the head of Europol had said that the EU's migration policy had led to 5,000 jihadists entering the EU. Let's just see what you said.
He's now backtracking, isn't he?
Let's just see what you said.
I take this very simple view. You quoted Europol at me. That same boss of Europol said that the migrant policy, and by the way, these are not refugees, they're mostly economic migrant policy over the last year, sparked by Angela Merkel, as we discussed earlier, has led to up to 5,000 jihadis coming in to the European Union in the space of the last 15 months.
Turns out he didn't say that.
Well, he did say that, but since I said that, he's backtracked.
Where did he say it?
Well, he said it, 3 months ago, 4 months ago.
Where is that
but
on
he's
the
now
record that he
backtracked.
said it?
Oh, I've got it on documentation. I've been using that quote since February of this year. But now we're reaching a critical point in the referendum. He's now backtracking. But, crucially, what is he saying?
Well, let's just see what he's saying.
What is he saying? Because it's actually very important.
We can put it up, what he's actually said in response. This is Rob Wade, right?
Yeah.
He's British,
head
of Europol. To be very clear, Mr Farage's claim on the ITV debate that I've said EU migration policy led to 5,000 jihadists coming to Europe is 100% false.
Well,
100%.
Well, actually what he said the next day was that the number was probably about a third of that, OK? That is what he said. Now, let's say that he's backtracked from 5,000, but even if it's a third of that, all right, even if it's about 1,500, bear this in mind. It just took 8 people to cause that atrocity in Paris. And we could also go to the former boss of Interpol, who says we may as well hang up a sign saying terrorists.
So when
welcome.
you claim something that turns out not to be true, you then say, well, something else is almost true.
Oh, no. It's true, but he obviously very worried that I'm using him.
The 5,000 figure refers to those EU citizens, including British citizens, that have gone to the Middle East and become jihadists. Most of them are still there. Some have come back. But our membership of the EU or EU migration policy has nothing to do with that figure.
Well, let me remind you that 2 of the 8 people that caused that atrocity in Paris got back into the European Union, having fought in Syria, posing as migrants through the Greek islands. And the point about this, and I've been saying this now for well over a year, the point is this: we have absolutely no mechanism. The Schengen area has absolutely no mechanism of vetting or checking who anybody is. And despite,
we do.
Despite that clear risk, about 1.8 million people last year came in to the European Union. Now, of course, you can say to me, oh, it's OK, Nigel, we're not in Schengen. Well, thank goodness we're not in Schengen. However, as we know, if you're in Schengen, in fact, interestingly, after a European Court of Judgment ruling this week, even if you're in Schengen illegally, you can't be stopped from moving around countries.
Right, but you can be stopped coming in.
So that leads in the short term to the pressures at Calais, Dieppe, Dunkirk and elsewhere. But longer term, it is clear, isn't it, that people who come and settle in a country will get, at some point in time, EU
Which brings
passports.
me to what I want to go on to, because the Sunday Telegraph reported you predicting Cologne-style sex attacks in Britain.
I didn't know such thing.
You told the ITV audience you'd been misrepresented. Well, let's just see what you said on LBC radio in January.
I think a lot of women are saying, goodness gracious me, if we vote to stay in, is this what's coming to this country? So, Roy,
is it what's coming to this country?
Yes, of course it is. I mean, those 1,000 young men that were outside a train station in Cologne will, within 3 to 4 years, have German passports.
Which means they effectively can come here.
Which means effectively that they can come here. And there is a problem with this.
So you did predict Cologne-style sex attacks.
I may have done months ago, but I chose in this referendum to try and make it a non-issue. Why? Because there are so many other things for us to talk about. However, is what I said in LBC wrong? Of course it's not. Is there a problem here? And it's not just Germany, it's Sweden as well.
But let's come to this issue that you said that they could then come here, because you said in a few years they'd be able to come here. But that's not true either, is it?
Well, in Hungary...
So let's stick with Germany, where most of them have gone.
In normal circumstances, naturalisation in Germany takes 7 years, maybe 8 years, but it can, of course, be much quicker if there's a large number of people involved. We don't know.
Well,
and
it never has been. It takes 8 years of residence in Germany before you can apply.
But
you need adequate knowledge of German. You need to be able to support yourself and your family financially. And most important of all, to do with the Cologne sex attackers, you need a clean criminal record.
The Cologne sex attackers, there have been hardly any convictions at
There's
all.
been quite a few
and there have been hardly any convictions.
But they couldn't come here in a couple of years.
But
that's
the point,
just not true.
But it won't be for us to decide whether people in Germany or Sweden or elsewhere get passports that give them full access to Britain.
But it's not a couple of years.
That's why.
As you tried to make out.
I said 3 or 4 years.
Turns out it's 8 plus.
In Hungary it's 3. In many other countries it's 4. In Germany it's 8. But it's trying not to. It's trying not to. But the point remains the same. The reason I got that passport out earlier is we do not have control who gets those passports. We've seen in Cyprus, we've seen in Malta, that literally EU passports are for sale to anybody. That surely doesn't make us safer.
Most people do want to control immigration. Most people, the polls suggest, think it's been too high. But language and tone are important, particularly for public figures. This is what the head of your church said about your Cologne comments.
I think that is an inexcusable pandering to people's worries and prejudices. That's giving legitimization to racism, which I've seen in parishes in which I've served and has led to attacks on people in those parishes. And we cannot legitimize that.
So lots of people watch this and think, yes, we do need to get control of immigration, but let's not pander to people's worries, as the Archbishop says.
We have good archbishops and bad archbishops.
What categories does he fall into?
Well, given that he was talking specifically about what had appeared in a Sunday newspaper, he clearly had read a headline and not the very careful words that I used.
Maybe he listened to you on LBC.
I doubt it very much indeed. You know,
but if he had, he'd been right, wasn't it? Because that's what you said.
I'm not trying to... What I'm saying is I want to make sure Britain is safe, I believe, by controlling its borders and by having a strict policy about who can come to this country. We can't completely isolate ourselves from international terrorism and the problem the world faces, but the question in this referendum is, can we make ourselves safer? And I genuinely believe that we can.
Let me come to one other thing before we move to the economy. Why have you been telling people that a vote to remain is a vote for Turkey to join the EU, and quite soon? Because although the Prime Minister's taken different positions in this, I give you that, it's official government policy that Turkey should one day become a member. But you and I both know it is not going to happen anytime soon.
Okay, well, let's just be clear about the Prime Minister, who has been the biggest cheerleader for Turkish entry since 2005.
And I put that to George Osborne, so we've done this.
Since 2005, and including March the 18th this year, a European Council resolution in which they said they're going to speed up the accession process. I would add to that, because now he's pretending that he's got a veto. I mean, not that he'd use it, of course. And we're being told that Turkey... The Prime Minister said Turkey won't join until the year 3000. Right.
Well, he said on the current trend that would be the case.
So
when do you think it will join?
So why, Prime Minister, does the British Embassy in Ankara, on its website today,
I understand,
boast quite clearly that they are working towards
that it wants Turkey to join. I understand that, but what I'm asking you is how quickly do you think it will happen?
Right. And could he also explain why the British government is paying over £1 billion
and I put that to George Osborne
in pre-accession aid? Why are they doing it?
Let me try for a third time.
2025?
2026?
Let's
look at that
2027? I don't know.
Turkey applied to join in 1987.
63 they first did, actually.
Yeah, but 1987 is the current membership application. It's 40 years old almost. Yeah. They need to qualify in 35 areas to be able to join. How many have they done so far?
Oh, 2, I think it is, or 3.
1.
Yeah, but,
and it's in science.
But hang on,
they've made little progress in 14 areas. They haven't even begun talks in 20.
We allowed Romania to join the European Union, whose treatment of 3 to 4 million Roma minority, says to me it should never have been allowed. The point about the European Union is, when it really comes to it, there are no rules. If they decide they want to do it, they will do it. But the hypocrisy is not from our side. We've warned about EU, and I've campaigned against EU enlargement for 20 years because I thought letting in countries whose average incomes were so much lower than ours would lead to big migratory waves and big problems. But for the Prime Minister and for the Chancellor now to be pretending that Turkish accession is not happening when 27 heads of state said they wanted Turkey to join as soon as possible.
It was the timetable
is
I was
simply
trying to get, and on this
timetable, we don't know, do we? We
it's
don't know.
a long way away. Let me move on.
But it's not just Turkey; it's Albania, it's Serbia, it's Macedonia.
Is the big one,
there are 5 countries en route to joining.
Let's move to the economy. You criticise the Prime Minister for saying the following. This is what you said. The Prime Minister is saying we wouldn't be able to access the single market unless we accepted the free movement of people. Yeah. Let me tell you, that is completely and utterly untrue. But the Prime Minister is right. Of course, we still have access in the sense that in or out, we'd continue to trade with the EU.
Good.
Of course, we trade with the whole world.
But he used the word access.
But we would not be able to trade in the same terms as we have with the single market. Do you accept that?
Right. What I object to in this debate is that quite deliberately, the Prime Minister and the Remain campaign, Lord Rose, well, he's disappeared, but the Remain campaign continually say that you cannot have access to the single market unless. Now, the truth is,
I'm not saying that. Of course, you would. What I'm trying to work out. I'm trying to work out what is the basis. Do you think if we left, what basis would we have access?
Okay. For the viewers, can we just clear this up? The whole world has access to the single market. All right. So let's just get that straight.
Trying to work out the basis.
Now, the question is on what basis?
That's
do you
what
have
I've been
access?
asking.
Right, OK. Let's ask ourselves a bigger question. Why did we join the European project 40 years ago?
I would just like an answer to the question I've asked. What basis?
I'm going to explain it to you. We joined for tariff-free access to the European market in a world of high tariffs. We now live in a world of low tariffs. And that cuddly common market has now become a political union where the costs of being part of a single market outweigh any benefit that we get through reduction of tariffs. So, OK, we vote for Brexit, we go into a negotiation. Let us just for the moment assume that the Germans and the French decide they're going to cut off their noses to spite their face with their biggest trading partner in the world, and we go to WTO rules with tariffs. That's the worst case scenario.
All right, well, let's take that scenario. Let's say the worst case. WTO is the World Trade Organization. It overviews, it authorizes the global trade rules. The WTO's own analytical survey said that if we traded on that basis, our businesses, we would face in this country £9 billion more of tariffs on imports coming into this country. £9 billion in higher costs to the British consumer. That's about the same as the net saving from the membership fee if we don't join. Gone in a puff of smoke. Not a penny left for the NHS or all the other things you said you would spend it on.
I've given you the worst case scenario. Okay.
Well, but however,
what we could do at the same time is take away the 10% tariff on every motor car made in Japan that is sold here. What we could do is take away the 17% tariff on shoes that are manufactured in Vietnam.
You can't take away individual tariffs under WTO rules. Under what's called favourable, most mutually and favourable standards, you have to treat everybody the same. You couldn't do that. And our exports would face 5 billion tariffs in markets. Your own business in Britain says 7 billion. Lower profits, jobs lost.
No, I don't accept that, because the worst case... What does the worst case scenario mean for that 12% of our economy? Let's just get some figures on this. 88% of the British economy does not export goods or services to the EU, all right? Of the 12% that does, what would, if this worst-case scenario occurred? It would make their products a bit more expensive.
Yes.
However...
£9 billion worth more.
However, currency fluctuations every month are bigger even than those tariffs. But here's the point. There is a tariff-free zone that extends from Iceland to Turkey.
Sure.
Interestingly. So Turkey has a tariff-free deal with the European Union.
For goods.
Without...
Not for services.
Well, to be honest with you...
80% of our economy is services.
Well, to be honest with you, I worked in the service sector. I saw the single market arrive in 1986, and 30 years...
it's not complete.
30 years on...
I understand that.
30 years on...
We have a vested interest then in staying in to complete... I mean, we could take a decision that we wouldn't put tariffs on any imports if we left the EU. At the moment, we have to put tariffs on non-EU stuff because that's the EU rule. Even if others were slapping tariffs on our exports, we didn't need to. That's what Patrick Minford, an economist for Brexit, or even breakfast, could say. But look what he then says if we do that. This is Patrick Minford. Over time, if we left the EU, it seems likely, on the basis we've been talking about, that we would mostly eliminate manufacturing, but this shouldn't scare us. Well, it scares me, Mr. Farage. Doesn't it scare you?
Yes, it worries me greatly.
But he's your favourite economist.
Hang on, he also said, because I went to his full presentation the other day, that we would have the ability to use whatever social means we needed to help support our industries.
That's you saving on the membership fee, but you already spent all the membership fee on having to pay these higher tariffs.
As I say, the worst case, an extremely unlikely scenario, for reasons I will go into in a minute, the worst case scenario means that not only are we no worse off, because our net membership fee is best part of £10 billion a year, but we would also not have to go on regulating with new EU regulations the 88% of our industry that does not do business. We would not have to accept free movement of people, and we'd be able to do our own trade deals if we chose with Japan to get cheaper motor cars.
But are you really telling the British people tonight that if we vote to leave the EU, the prospect for manufacturing industry is that it heads over time for elimination, and all it can hope for is some subsidies just to reduce the pain as we eliminate it?
Do you know
what you're saying tonight?
Do you know what has happened to manufacturing industry? What has happened to our chemical plants, 24 of which have closed? What has happened to both our aluminium plants?
We still have a highly successful manufacturing sector.
But we've lost it.
And now you're saying we could eliminate it.
No, I'm not saying that. We've lost our heavy engineering. We've lost much of our heavy manufacturing. And why? Because we went down the European Union route of going for wind technology and expensive costs of electricity.
Well, I do wonder if
we did it. Well, hang on. Tony Blair signed us up to a 2020 strategy, and we have beggared heavy industry in this country.
Let me ask you one final question, Mr. Farage. On Wednesday, the Chancellor, sitting in that chair, he ended the interview, as we are about to now, by claiming the referendum was a choice between your, what he called, mean and divisive vision of Britain, and a more confident and open one. Remain want to make you the poster boy for leave because they think if they do that, they'll win. Doesn't that worry you?
Not in the least. They are part of the Westminster bubble. None of them have ever had a proper job in their lives. None of them go out and meet ordinary people and perhaps, in my case, occasionally have a pint with them. And let me tell you, my vision is to put this country and the British people first, and for us to divorce ourselves from political union and to re-engage with the rest of the world. It is upbeat, it is optimistic, and do you know something? I think we're going to win.
Nigel Farage, thank you for being with us tonight. And that's it for tonight. But I'll be back next Friday with Leave campaigner and former Tory Cabinet Minister Ian Duncan Smith. That's at the later time of 8:30 here on BBC One. I hope you can join me then. Until then, bye-bye.
Hello, I'm Sophie Long with your 90-second update. Thousands of people have lined the streets of Louisville for Muhammad Ali's funeral. He died last week, aged 74. Will Smith and Lennox Lewis helped carry the coffin. It's the start of 3 days of official birthday celebrations for the Queen. Her Majesty turned 90 in April. A national service of thanksgiving was held today at St Paul's Cathedral. Guilty of murder, the partner of former EastEnders actress Sian Blake has admitted killing